Because if someone did something nice, there was a part of me that felt like, okay, I have to do something in exchange. I have to do something nice in return. And it wasn't that I was trying to keep score, but a part of me felt indebted. It's like, hi everyone, welcome to the Lead from Love podcast. I am Yalini, I am your host and love coach. And in today's episode, I'm going to explore how you may be sabotaging your own happiness by rejecting love without even knowing it. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Who wouldn't want to be loved? Because even though I know everyone has their own take on what love means, for most people, love is like a teaspoon of honey. It is sweet, it goes down easy, and it feels good. But the truth is, it's not that straightforward. That's why in this episode, I'm going to share what people think love is and then what it really is, as well as how and why you may be rejecting it. But to help you stop the cycle of rejection and sabotage, I'm going to share my 4 top tips on what you can do instead to get you on the right path back to reclaim the love that you deserve. All right, so to start off with, what is even going on when we think of love? Because many of us yearn for love. We crave it. We even spend most of our lives searching for it. And you know what? It makes sense because at our core, humans are herd animals, which means we need to be part of a community to feel good. It's what helps us feel connected, helps us belong, which is important because in terms of evolution, being part of the community is what kept us safe, because then you could protect one another. Otherwise, you're out in the wild fending for yourself with no help, which leaves you completely vulnerable and exposed. So it's hardwired into us to seek out community. It's why you need to have people around you that care about you, because what it does is it regulates your nervous system. Knowing that they'll show up for you in your time of need helps you feel safe. It helps you feel calm. And that's why, it can feel good to have a partner, because then you're not doing this life alone, because otherwise it can feel like you are constantly battling for your own survival, like an animal alone in the wild. It's exhausting because it means you always have to be switched on. So if being part of a community makes you feel safe and calm, then love is like the cherry on top. It's what we think will feel warm and fuzzy and just feel good on the inside. And when I think about it, the visual I get reminds me of, one of those old Looney Tune cartoons when the character falls in love, and in that moment they can defy gravity. Their bodies just lift up into the air and they're floating completely carefree and starry-eyed towards, that special someone. And you can hear the orchestra music playing in the background, and they are just on cloud 9. And when they connect with each other and they're wrapped up in each other's arms, it's like nothing else matters in that moment. Time stays still. And who wouldn't want that? It's like living the dream. So when we're searching for love, that's what a lot of us are really searching for. We're searching for the kind of love that'll, make our problems and the rest of the world just melt away. That this love, this glorious melt your heart love will just lift you up, lift your spirits, give you, those wings and just make life feel better. And it doesn't just have to be romantic love from a partner. It can be platonic love from friends and family and even colleagues. Because deep down, what most people are really craving from love is just to be seen, to be accepted for who they really are, to be accepted into the herd without pretense, without having to put on a facade, to just be them in their raw fullness. But here's the truth about love. You ready for it? To be loved in that way, you actually have to be willing to be seen for who you really are. And that is a thought that scares most people to their core, because who else has that little voice going on in the back of their minds telling them how they're not good enough, they're not smart enough, they're not pretty enough, they don't know enough, and they're not successful enough. And it goes on and round like a loop in your mind. I mean, no one is as hard on you as you are on yourself. So the idea of letting someone else in to see those parts of you that you think are ugly or imperfect or embarrassing, that is scary. Because if you don't love yourself enough for your quote unquote flaws, then you're essentially rejecting yourself. And if you open those parts of yourself up to someone else, then you're at risk of them rejecting you for it as well. So as much as you may crave to be loved, as warm and fuzzy as that idea might be, deep down, most people are just scared. They're scared of love because they are scared of being truly seen and then rejected for it. And that is the difference. Most people think love feels safe and warm and makes everything better. But the truth is, love can be scary. It can leave you feeling exposed and vulnerable. And, that's not to say that love can't feel warm and fuzzy and make you feel good. It absolutely should. Love can feel amazing. But the difference is what it requires of you to be able to receive that. Because to be deeply loved, you need to be deeply seen. And that's a risk a lot of people are scared to take. So here's why and how you may be rejecting love, because despite however scary it may feel to be seen, we still crave love. We still crave connection and community and support, because we're not meant to do this life alone. We're herd animals. And here's the truth. When you came into this world, love was easy. You were born expecting to be loved, expecting to be held and seen and taken care of, because as a baby, you relied on your parents. You relied on them. They were your community. You needed them to show up for you. And you screamed your little lungs out every time you needed to be fed, every time you needed to be held or changed. You didn't care what time it was. You didn't apologize for crying at 3 a.m. or 1:30 or 6, even if your mum was sleep deprived or exhausted and run down and just struggling. Still, you cried because you had needs, you expected them to be met, and you expected to be loved. And sure, maybe she didn't come running as soon as you wanted every time, or it didn't always play out the way you may have liked. But you cried, and you kept crying, and you're still here. So one way or another, your needs were met, because you didn't stay quiet, because you didn't feel bad. You weren't trying to be a good little girl or a good little boy, or try not to be too demanding. You don't want to put anyone out. Back then, that's how easy it was to speak up, to ask to be loved, to expect it, to receive it. So when did it get so complicated? When did you stop asking for what you want? When did you start feeling guilty for receiving? Well, that came through a little thing called life with a little bit of trauma. And it didn't have to be big traumas like me, where I grew up poor and with a single parent trying to make ends meet, or with a dad that was abusive, or uncles that were violent. Because for most people, it's not really the big traumas that affect them. It's the series of all the little things, all the little traumas that happen consistently. Things like, maybe someone didn't show up for you when they said they would, and they just left you hanging. Or your feelings got dismissed when you tried to share how you feel. They said things like, don't worry, you'll be fine, just get over it, or move on. And it could be when you weren't held, when you were sad and you were left to just console yourself. And any one of those things in and of themselves might not seem like much. But when they happen over and over and over again, then sooner or later you start to think, what's the point? What's the point of asking for help? What's the point of reaching out? They're not going to show up for me. And so what's the antidote to that constant rejection and feeling let down and disappointment and hurt? The antidote is just to become hyper independent, hyper self-sufficient, where you don't need anyone. You are fine. And in a way, it's great. It's amazing to have those challenges through your life to really show you how strong you are, how capable, how there is nothing that you can't get through. But like all things in life, anything taken to an extreme becomes unbalanced. So hyper independent at the cost of not needing anyone, that just leaves you all alone. And we're herd animals. We're not meant to do this life alone. So to help you recognize how that independence may be playing out in your life, I'm going to share some of my own personal stories from my journey to help you identify the different ways that you might also be rejecting love without even knowing it. And some of them may surprise you. Because deep down for me, despite all the challenges I had with my dad and my uncles and the fear of men and the belief that they can't be trusted, deep down, I still craved love. I yearned for a relationship. I always wanted a strong man in my life that could just wrap me up in his arms and let me know that I'm safe, that I could just lean into and know that I was okay. Because love was my heart's desire. And when I got into my first relationship, it was great. I mean, it's been my lot in life to date amazing cooks because I love food. But because I grew up poor and I hadn't healed that part of me back then, I didn't know how hard it was for me to accept people's generosity. Because if someone did something nice, there was a part of me that felt like, okay, I have to do something in exchange. I have to do something nice in return. And it wasn't that I was trying to keep score, but a part of me felt indebted. It's like I owed them. So next time it had to be my turn. And, you know, when he cooked me amazing meals, I mean, I was grateful. But if he did it a few nights in a row and I didn't feel like I had contributed in some way, especially financially, or I hadn't done something to deserve it, I felt really uncomfortable. And I mean, honestly, I feel embarrassed admitting it. But one night I actually pretended not to be hungry just so I didn't have to feel guilty for always feeling like I was taking. And it's ridiculous because he loved cooking. It made him happy to make me happy. So saying no just to be polite, just so I didn't feel like I was taking too much, so I could bring some sort of balance back into it, that was just me rejecting love. That was me not knowing how to fully receive. Because here's the truth. You don't have to earn love. Just like a baby crying doesn't have to pay back their parent in cuddles in order to be fed in the middle of the night. There's nothing you need to do to deserve that kindness. You're allowed to receive simply because you're allowed to be loved. And of course, you know, you can receive with gratitude. It's more that you don't have to think about having your turn, having your next time and your return. Because sometimes you don't give back straight away. It might mean that they give, you know, a few things or do a few nice things for you. And you'll end up doing nice things because of course you will. That's love. It ends up having a natural exchange. Everything balances out in the end. But it just means that until you do something in return, you don't have to reject everything in between because it's too much. You feel guilty. You couldn't possibly accept it. Because then you just end up rejecting them and rejecting love along with it. And you know what? People don't tend to offer under obligation. They tend to offer because it feels nice. It can make you happy. So I'm sharing this story with you because I wonder where in your life something similar may have played out. It's not necessarily that you said no to a dinner, but where you may have rejected love because you felt guilty, because you couldn't possibly accept another one of their kind offers unless you did something in return, unless you cooked the next meal, unless you invited them around next time, or you paid for the next dinner. All those scenarios where you may have rejected love because you were worried about your turn and what's right and what's fair and not wanting to be too much. And rejecting love can play out in other ways too. I mean, I remember going for a hike and walking down this really rocky road, and one of the guys in the group put out his hand to help me. And I didn't take it because I was too busy trying to prove how independent and capable I was. So in my head, I was fine. I've got this. And I thought I was being impressive, showing just how capable I was. But I completely missed the point because it didn't matter if I actually needed help. It was just a gesture. It was an act of love. And I don't mean in love. I just mean that all of that kindness, it's all forms of love. And I rejected it. And the irony is sometimes we are so busy looking for that great love, wondering when will it come into our lives? When will we finally find it? But if you keep rejecting the small offers of love in your day-to-day, then how could you possibly be ready to receive it on a bigger scale? Because love doesn't always look the way that you think, but it's all love. And it's not just with men or in relationships. You know, a few years ago, I moved into a new place and my friends asked me if I needed help, if there was anything they could do. And honestly, at that time, I was overwhelmed. I was exhausted. I had just gone through a breakup. I was working 6.5 days of the week. I had back-to-back clients. I was working really late in the evening and then early full days the next day. I was overwhelmed and I had a whole house to furnish. So it was a lot. And the crazy part is that even though I wanted help, I said no because in my mind, I hadn't even figured out where I wanted to put everything. So it didn't make sense to ask someone else to help me when I couldn't even give them direction on what to do and how to do it. I didn't want to waste their time. I didn't want to feel like a burden or put anyone out. But that wasn't the point. Truth is, that offer to help, it's not just about whatever was practical. Those offers of help from friends in those times of need, they're about community. They're about love, about allowing yourself to be supported so you don't have to go through that process alone. Because the truth is, while I was busy putting furniture together on my own, I could have asked for help. I could have accepted it. Not necessarily because I needed it, not because I wasn't capable of doing it myself, but because instead of going, I did all of this, I could have built memories with my friends of when we did all of this, of silly things that we could have done or fun moments that we could have shared. So I robbed us of that possibility just because I was trying to be considerate. I didn't want to put anyone out. I didn't want to be a burden. So whether or not you accept those offers of help, of love, it's not always about whether or not you need it. Sometimes it's about how much richer would life be if we just gifted that experience to each other. And like despite all the work I've done on myself in this space, even recently I noticed myself go back into those old patterns. I've been really open and honest with some of the challenges I've had with my mum recently. And, I've struggled. It's been hard and I've been vulnerable in some of my shares on socials. And something really interesting happened that I wasn't expecting. I had people reach out to me and offer to catch up, to help me feel better, to support me. And the crazy part is that even in those moments, I noticed that my instinct reaction was to go, oh, it's okay. I'm all right. I'm fine. I'm all good. Don't worry about it. And, in part it's because I felt like I was coming out of my slump and I was starting to feel like myself again. And I've learned over the years to lean into the people that I have around me. So I'm so grateful for my friends and family. So in that moment, I thought, oh, I don't need more support. I'm actually okay. I don't want to put anyone out. But if I had responded that way, then I would have still been rejecting love because It's not always about whether or not you need help. Sometimes it's just about whether or not it would be nice. And yes, of course, catching up with beautiful people, that would always feel nice. So I had to retrain myself to accept the kind offers, to accept the love and go, you know what, that would be so beautiful. Thank you. I had to retrain myself to not look at myself like I would be a burden, especially because if there's nothing that needs to be done, then the thoughts in my head is, well, I don't want to waste their time. I don't want to be an inconvenience. I mean, everyone is busy. I don't want them to have to come out and then think, oh, well, there's nothing to do. Because just like it's not always about whether or not you need help, it's also not always about doing anything. Sometimes it is just about being present, being together, being connected, because everyone can gain from that connection. They can walk away feeling like a good person, and you can walk away feeling loved and supported. So these are just some of the different ways that you may be rejecting love in your life, in ways that maybe you didn't realize before. And now that you're aware of it, here's what you can do differently. Here are my top 4 tips. 1, say yes and thank you. Sometimes all of those big or small traumas that you're carrying, they can have you living in this self-protective, super self-sufficient mode where you don't need anyone. So instead of rejecting help and love along with it because you are fine, practice saying yes and thank you when people offer to help. Let people show up for you, even if it's helping you with your luggage or your groceries or with dinner. Start with the small things and then work your way up from there. It doesn't matter whether or not you really need the help. Just look at it as an opportunity to deepen connections and build your community. Just start the process of letting people in, getting used to receiving instead of rejecting. 2, ask for what you want. Say yes and thank you enough times with the first step that it starts to feel comfortable, and then work your way up to actually asking for help when you need it, because sometimes we need to speak up. People won't always offer first and they can't read your minds. So once you've gotten a feel through step 1 for the people who will show up and are reliable, when you start asking for help, it can feel easier because then you know who's likely to say yes. There's less risk of rejection or someone saying no in that. And 3, flow with it, because when someone offers to help, just know that their definition of help doesn't always look like yours. So be open to what they have to offer. Just because it doesn't look the way you would do it doesn't mean it's not offered with the same level of love and intention. Whether that means that they load the dishwasher or organize the house differently to you, you know what? It is good practice to get flexible, because when you're used to always taking care of yourself, when you have your way of doing things, sometimes they can make us rigid. And it's okay for things to be a little different sometimes, because you know what? All relationships require flexibility. So if you're looking to invite someone into your life, this is good practice to help you step out of your fixed ways of doing things. And 4, get clear. Where do you need support in a particular way? Communicate your needs. Be clear with the kind of support that you want. So for instance, if you need to talk, clarify if you want advice to problem solve so they can help you resolve an issue, or if you just want to vent, if you just want a sympathetic ear so you can just do a dump and get things off of your chest. This is important because people don't always know the way that you need help, and so they often offer it the way that they would want to. So by clearly saying from the start exactly what you need when you know that you need something specific, it'll reduce the risk of you feeling disappointed or rejected and not getting the kind of help that you need. Because when we feel like people aren't showing up in the way we need, we tend to ask less. And sometimes they just need some pointers. And that's it. They're the 4 top tips. It keeps it really simple. And it can help you let down your guard when it comes to letting people in, so you can finally allow yourself to receive the love that this life has to offer, because you deserve it. And like I've said, most people think love is warm and fuzzy and feels good. But it's not always that straightforward, because being deeply loved can make you feel naked and exposed. It requires you to be so deeply seen. And if you've gone through big traumas of abuse or violence, or small consistent traumas where you weren't loved the way you needed, or people didn't follow through on their commitments to you, or you were ignored or dismissed for how you feel, then bringing down those walls to let love in, it can feel so scary, because that risks opening you up to more rejection, more hurt, more disappointment. And then to survive, you've likely gone into self-protective mode, where you became hyper self-sufficient and independent. And now, when people ask you how you are fine. You've got it together. You don't need anyone. And I get it. I lived that life. But from here, you're just keeping love at arm's length, because you have gotten so good at protecting yourself and taking care of yourself that you don't know how to accept the offers of help and support, because you're so good that you don't want to be a burden. So you end up rejecting love without even knowing it. It's in the moments where you say that you are fine when people offer to help you, whether it's cooking you a nice dinner or putting out their hand to help you, or helping you move and just showing up if you have a hard time. And sure, maybe sometimes you accept it every now and then. But typically it's only as long as you know that you can repay the favor, not because you're just simply allowing yourself to receive. Love isn't a business exchange. You're allowed to be loved without having to work for it. It is your birthright. You came into this world screaming your little lungs out, expecting to be heard, expecting to be fed and loved, because you need love. You need it to feel safe and calm in this world. Because as humans, we're herd animals. We need community. We need connection, because we're not here to do this life alone. That is just lonely. So to rewire, here are the 4 simple steps that you can take. 1, say yes and thank you to offers of help. Even if you don't need it, allow them to simply be connection points to strengthen the community around you. 2, ask for what you want when you feel safest. You don't have to wait on people to read your mind when you need help. You can say it, vocalize it. 3, flow with the help that is offered, because it will not always look how you want, but it's okay. It'll teach you flexibility, because all relationships require compromise. And 4, get clear when you do need something specific, so you can be loved in the way that you need. Because here's what it all comes down to. You are worthy of being loved. You are worthy of being seen and accepted for who you are in this world. You don't have to reject the love that you deserve. And if you implement these changes, you not only receive more love in your life, but you might just start to believe that you deserve it too. So lead from love.